Hey guys, welcome to QA Prayogshala. So guys, in today's session, we are going to look into the client-server architecture. So we'll go step by step. First of all, we'll see what is the definition of the concept, okay, what the definition says. Then we'll try to understand the definition in some simplified form. We'll try to elaborate it right into the language that will we all understand, and then we'll see some examples around the concept, and we'll try to perform some experiment to understand this concept, that what do we exactly mean by a client server architecture. Okay, so what is a client server architecture? Okay, so as per Wikipedia, okay, the definition, it says that the client server model, it is a distributed application structure that partitions the workload between client and server, right? So here, while we refer a client, we mean the resource, or we mean a service requester, right? The one who is requesting for a certain service or a resource. While when we say the server, we mean the providers of a resource or service. Okay, so that is what the definition says, right? So if you see the client server model, right, there are two main actors here. One is a client and another one is a server, right? So there are two actors here, okay, and if we look at the definition, it is saying that the workload is distributed between these two actors, right? So what exactly is the work of these two actors, right? So there could be a case, right? Always there will be a case wherein there is a consumer of a service, and there has to be someone who can actually respond to the request of a consumer, right? So that is what how it has to be, right? So one is the client who is requesting for a certain service, and another is a server, right? By server we mean a one who can actually respond to this particular request, right? As simple as that. Now let's try to understand this with some example, okay? So let's try to understand. So let's say for an example, okay, you are going for a vacation and you are in a flight, okay? Let's say for an example, you are in a flight. So in a flight, normally we have flight attendants, okay? So let's say for an example, you are thirsty, you are sitting on a seat and you are thirsty. So obviously you need water, right? So what you'll do is you'll be calling a flight attendant right at your seat, and you'll be requesting a water from her, for an example, right? So based on this request, what flight attendant will normally do is she will provide a service of delivering water at your seat wherever you are sitting, right? So if we elaborate this example a bit, right? So there are two actors here, right? One is a consumer or a client, right? Who is requesting for a water here, right? Here, right? So water here in this case could be a service, right? Water here is nothing but a resource, right? And delivering water at your seat is nothing but the service, right? So that is provided by a flight attendant. So what is a flight attendant here? So in this case, in this example, flight attendant is nothing but flight attendant is a server here, because she is actually serving the request of delivering water at your seat. Secondly, in other words, if we see, right, she is actually delivering a resource to you, right? So you are requesting a certain resource here, and you are getting the resource at your seat. So that is a service. Okay, now let's try to elaborate more here. So basically, right, in order to request to a server, right, you need to use a certain language, right? Otherwise, how flight attendant will understand your language, right? There has to be a common language that is actually understood by both server and a client, right? So language comes into the picture. So in technical terms, right, that language is nothing but that is an HTTP protocol, right? So language is HTTP protocol is used, right, in order to communicate between a client and a server, right? That thing we'll see in a detail in upcoming episodes, right? But for now you need to just remember, right, that, or you need to understand that basically, obviously, right, there has to be a common language that is understood by both server and a client in order to communicate, or in order to communicate, or in order for a communication to happen between two parties, right, there has to be a common language, right? As simple as that. Otherwise communication could not happen. Let's say for an example, you speak in certain language, let's say Hindi, right? And the other person is speaking in some another language, right? Let's say for an example Spanish or something, and you don't know Spanish. Then how do you communicate with that person, right? That's a bit difficult, right? Or else you need some interpreter, right, that knows both the languages in order to communicate, right? So as simple as that. So this is a simple example wherein we can understand a server client communication, right? uh, we'll see some more examples. There could be some another example also, right? So let's say for an example, you are in a restaurant, right? You went to a restaurant in order to have your dinner, right? So over there also, right, you need to order your food, right? First of all, you need to order your food there, right? So in order to order your food, you need to call waiter, right? Again, uh, waiter needs to understand your language, right? In order to order the food, waiter needs to understand a language. It could be English or Hindi or something like that, right? Then and then only you can order your food. So here again, you are ordering a food here, right? Waiter comes at your table. He'll be taking the order, right? He'll be going to the kitchen, right? And he'll be bringing back the food to you, right? As simple as that. So here in this case, right, again there is a service requester, right? That is you. There is a resource requester as well, right? That is again you are requesting for food. So here in this case, food is nothing but a resource, right? Delivering food at your table is nothing but that is the service that is being provided by a waiter, right? That is what they charge for, right? Again, there is a common language that is being understood by you and the waiter. So there are three things here, right? One is a service requester who will be requesting for a service or a resource, right? Both of the things will be interlinked in most of the cases. Second thing is a waiter is nothing but a server, right? Is nothing but a request server, right? Who is serving your request, right? As simple as that. So you guys might have visited Google many times, right? So let's say for an example, you are planning a Goa trip, right? It's a vacation time, you are planning a Goa trip. So obviously, right, you need to book some hotels, you need to book flights and something like that, right? You need to plan it accordingly, right? So let's say for an example, you go to Google, right, and you are just searching for Goa trip there. So what you'll see most of the times is you'll see the relevant results, right? That will show you how you can book flight tickets, that will show you how to plan Goa trips. In certain cases you'll see certain sites through which you can book hotels and something like that, right? So here if you see, right, again there are two parties. One is the service requester, right? That is obviously no one but us, again, but here instead of us, requester is a web browser, right? Because we are not directly sending a request to server in this case, like the way we did in earlier examples. Here instead we are using an interface called a web browser in order to search um, our query, right, or information, as simple as that. So here the service requester is a web browser. It is requesting for a information here, right? There is a server who is returning the information to you, right? So web browser here in this case is a client, right? And in this case, since we are using Google, so Google server is acting as a server who is serving a request of sending back information to you, as simple as that. So this is an example, again an example of a web server, right? Let's take some more examples. That could be file servers also, right? So in certain cases, if you remember, right, we used to use something called as an FTP protocol, that is a file transfer protocol, right? So over there, what happens is, right, normally there is a client like us will be requesting for a certain um, files, right? So if you remember, right, normally we do it usually if we uh, go to our Windows machine, and if we search for a certain file, we get that file immediately if that file exists, right? So in that case, again, a simple thing, right? There is a client who is requesting for a resource, that is a file. There is a server who is responding to this request and sending back that file to us, right? So resource here is a file, and service is to deliver that file to you, that is client, right? So as simple as that. That is example of a file server. Again, one more example that we would be using it in our day-to-day life is if we are in an office or in a, right, if we are in an office, and let's say for an example we want to um, basically print something, right? So there is a network printer through which we can actually print. So normally this could have happened that if we simply want to print something, then with the help of a print server, right, we can actually print uh, a page or some document or something like that, right? So that is again an example of a server client architecture. So client is requesting for a service of printing, and print server normally fulfills this request of printing the file or document or something like that, right? So that is an example again of a print server. So this is what we mean by a server client architecture, right? This is what we mean by a server client architecture, as simple as that, right? So often client and server, they communicate over a network in a separate hardware, right? So normally what happens is, right, if we go to this, if we look at this diagram, right, normally client and server, they resides on two separate machines, right? If we see our earlier example of Google, right, if we see our earlier example of a Google, so in this case, right, in this case, we are searching for Goa trip on our machine, right? And Google servers, definitely they are not residing on our own machine. They are residing on a separate machines, right? That very powerful machines. So often they reside on two separate machines, right? But they may reside on the same system too, right? There could be cases that both server and client, they reside on the same system too, right? One of the example could be if you are a developer, or if you are into a QA field, definitely, right? Then we normally, developers, what they do is they first of all develop some code into their local machine, right? And if you have seen front-end developers, we have something called as an local host. So first of all, what they do is, right, they develop certain code. They'll be developing certain HTML files, some front-end code, right, on their local machines. They'll do some local setup, and what they normally do is, right, uh, they normally will be writing something like this: local host 8080, something like this, right? And right, and through with the use of an with the help of an Apache server, right, Apache server, right, they'll be able to see their application on their local machine, right? So that is the example wherein client and server, they both are residing on the same machine here, right? So that is the thing. Okay. Also, one more fact is a server host, it could run one or more server programs to share its resource with multiple clients, right? So if we see an example of this Google, right? So in the case of Google, clients are multiple, right? There could be n number of clients, okay? But a one server can serve multiple clients at the same time, right? At the same time. So that is a fact. uh, One more fact is client won't normally share any of its resources, right? Client won't share any of its resources. So if we take an example of Google, right? In this case, we are not sharing any of our resources, but we are requesting for a resource. Resource here is nothing but information related to co-trip, right? But server will share its resources most of the time. So these are some of the facts, right? Also, this video was partly made from Wikipedia. Okay, so video making source is Wikipedia. So in case if you go to Wikipedia, right, you can find client server architecture details there. If you want to look into more detail, you can always refer Wikipedia site, right? That's all for today's lecture, guys. Do hit like button if you liked this video, and do subscribe this channel for more of such videos. Thanks for watching.